Right. So Russian formalism is concerned with sound, imagery, rhythm, syntax, meter, rhyme. It is about the writer's technical prowess and craft skill. Now, a very important idea in Russian formalism we have already seen is that poetic language is important. Poetic language is a different kind of a language that linguistics should bring under its study. Linguistics should focus not only upon ordinary language but also upon poetic language, literary language. A word that effectively conveys this idea is this word, language made strange, the phrase. This is a key phrase of the Russian formalists. Now, what do you mean by language made strange? What did you come across in Wordsworth, for example? A poet is a man speaking to ordinary men in a state of vivid sensation. And poetry should present ordinary life in an unusual aspect. Remember? It is not a photograph of ordinary life that you need in poetry, in romantic poetry. It is ordinary life in an unusual aspect. From there, this making ordinary language strange, that idea has crept in from that period onwards. Poetry should not use ordinary language as it is. It should be somehow distorted or changed or transformed or even deformed. That is what makes poetry. If you write ordinary language, then it won't be poetry. When ordinary language is deformed in some way, it becomes poetry. So Russian formalists say that literary language is different from all other kinds of language. Literary language, according to the Russian formalists, is different from all other kinds of language because it calls attention to itself. Dressing up for your marriage is different from all other ordinary kinds of dressing. Because dressing up for marriage calls attention to itself, isn't it? I will wear an ordinary sari and ordinary ornaments. I don't need a beautician. I will not wear a lot of makeup or flowers. When girls say this, the relatives will all say, no, you should dress more, you should put on more flowers, you should make yourself more different, deform yourself. When a lot of beautiful girls dress up for marriage, they do look deformed. But that is the convention. You have to deform yourself in such a way that everybody will know, oh, this is the bride. The bride should call attention to herself. Literary language is like that. Literary language is ordinary language that calls attention to itself because it is somehow different. It emphasizes the fact that it is constructed. When a bride dresses up for marriage, she emphasizes the fact that I am not the normal self. Because that bride should also, it is a social technique of constructing a bride. The bride should not laugh out loud or run about or move her arms and, she should walk like she's in a trance. She should have that romantic, dreamy, ethereal feeling. In order to do that, she has to be like the Victorians made women wear corsets. She has to be worn all this heavy sari and ornaments and pins and hair clips and so many things from head to toe that she will not be able to move about or she will act like the bride she is. Otherwise you will forget. Because of the pain you won't laugh, you will only smile like this. You see? So the bride should feel that she is a bride. Like that, literary language should feel that I am literature, not ordinary language. So ordinary language should be deformed in some way to give the feeling that it is constructed. It is, the bride should feel, I belong to that man who just married me. That should come as a bang. That experience of marriage should be so traumatic that, so different from ordinary days, that day should be that she is thrown into the reality that I am not the old self anymore, I am this man's wife. Like that, literature should never forget that there is an artist. Literature should always remind us that I am not ordinary language, there is an artist. I am not a girl who is like a butterfly, but I am like a dog chained to the post. Chained to an artist, literature should be. So, literary language calls attention to itself. It reminds us, it emphasizes the fact that it is constructed, that there is, how patriarchal. Don't you think? That is why I said all these analogies, because ultimately they are all patriarchs, male chauvinists. Language, they're against freedom, see? Post-structuralism is much better. Post-structuralism liberates you. It gives you freedom. You don't have to be confined to anything. You can be what you are. You don't have an artist or anybody who is always controlling you and determining what you should think and say. That freedom of the post-World War period, of the 1960s was a very major period. In the 1960s, there were student movements, youth movements. There were 100 different liberation movements in the US and Europe. The rise of popular culture, the rise of cinema, so many things happened together that liberated the conservative European from the shackles of tradition. So the 1960s was a period of emancipation for the Westerner. That is what is reflected in post-structuralism and postmodernism. Whereas all the previous movements are somehow essentialist. There are leashes that tie you to the post. There are limiting factors in all previous theories. Russian formalism also reminds you that literary language is always something that an artist has created. It is ordinary language that has been deformed in some way. Because of this use of language made strange, the everyday world suddenly becomes unfamiliar. This is an essentialist approach, obviously. The presumption is that there is an everyday world that appears in one manner to all of us, and it is necessary to deform that experience and give you a defamiliarized, fresh experience of everyday life. It is based on these preconceived notions that they are speaking. Whereas post-structuralism, cultural studies, these popular culture studies, today we talk a lot about popular culture. We should not defamiliarize or anything. Popular culture should be studied as it is. Go down to the Malayalam writer P. Surendran. Wrote recently, he was doing a project on transsexuals, hijadas. He wrote about it recently. Very, very good work, in fact. What he did was to go and live with them and experience their lives, and must have been terrible for an ordinary man from an ordinary society, because it's a very strange kind of a world. But that is how popular culture research is done. You don't set them apart as marginals, you don't treat them as abnormal, which is not the approach of the Russian formalists or the humanists. The humanists think that ordinary world is already there, it is superficial and bad, and it is not good enough. Ordinary life as it is cannot be written in poetry, so it should be made strange or defamiliarized. That is obviously a term that was introduced by Viktor Shklovsky. Everybody knows he wrote about that term in Art as Technique or Art as Device, variously translated as Art as Technique or Art as Device.